Hi and welcome to the online core training workshop. I'm going to take you through some tips and tricks that you'll be able to use to help control your core, engage your core, that will improve your fitness, your goals and help to keep you injury free. So think about your core as your corset. What do I mean by that? As you can see, the corset, wraps all the way around, and the core musculature of your trunk wraps all the way around and connects your upper body to your lower body, and it helps generate force. So just bear that in mind when you think about what the core is. What does the core do? So the core does quite a few things, and for us the most important thing is bracing. So we have static and dynamic bracing. So think about you're about to take a punch, and you automatically tighten up to prevent yourself from moving. So it prevents the trunk from moving, and it also helps to generate movement and generate force. The body also flexes, so it moves the trunk forward like a sit-up that most people will be familiar with. It extends, so it moves the trunk in the opposite direction of flexion like a back raise. We rotate, so it allows the trunk to rotate like throwing or kicking. And we have anti-rotation, so it prevents rotation when generating force, especially single-sided movements. So think about a overhead kettlebell press. So the ones in bold, bracing and anti-rotation, the reason I've got them is because they're both like the main movements or what we would use or why we'd use the core when it comes to our strength training. So they're for me are the most important ones. So I just want to talk a wee bit about static and dynamic. So we have static bracing, so that's where there's no movement, so it's a bit like a plank. So that's kind of our foundations and where we should start. And then from there we move on to dynamic bracing. So we're still static through our core and there's no movement there, or limited movement. And then we have movement from the limbs, the arms and the legs. So it's bracing with movement. So any exercise, it's not static. So think about a squat, a deadlift, where we have to brace and still generate movement. I'm going to go into a wee bit more detail about these movements and where we should focus our training on. So we've got flexion exercises. Most people will be familiar with these. It's where most people spend their time training. When lifting, we want to avoid flexion and extension during the lift because it's more likely to injure us. We want to keep everything solid with no movement. It's not as transferable as learning how to brace. It feels like you are working hard, but it won't get you a flat tummy or six pack. So you probably see loads of people in the gym doing these exercises, or you might have done an abs class and you think, oh, I've really worked my core there. In reality, you're probably not doing yourself any favours. So doing the odd exercise is no big deal, but you could probably spend your time better, and we're going to cover about where that time should be spent. Rotation exercises. So kind of like this, wood choppers, band chops, any rotation. So when they're isolated, you've got to question, is it that useful? So when I say isolated, it's kind of a wee bit isolation there where he's not using his full body as much. There's a wee bit of movement from the legs and the hips, But how does that help you when it comes to your lifting? So if you're maybe looking for aesthetics in bodybuilding, then it can be good to target that kind of muscle, so the kind of V-shaped oblique muscles. Again, I would go back to the bracing first. So before we add movement, we want to have the bracing and the control of our core and the engagement before we add in some advanced movements. It's back sparing because there's not any flexion or extension, so it's less likely that you're going to injure your back on these exercises. It's more specific to sports and power if used properly. And what I mean by that is probably a wee bit more compound, so there's a bit more full body movement using the legs and the arms and rotation all at the one time. So any big movements like kicking, punching, all come from rotation. I would stick to those compound exercises rather than isolation for the most benefit. So before we strengthen and we go into bracing, we need to have control and awareness. You're maybe wondering, well, control what? So think about your hips, and you can see, in the picture there, the movement of the hips. And the next one, the Michael Jackson, can see that. So he's moving his pelvis backwards and forwards. And I'm going to take you through a couple of little drills to help create awareness and have control of that pelvis, because there's no point strengthening if we haven't, put ourselves in the right position. So if we look at the first picture on the left, we can see, in terms of posture and position of the pelvis. So if we take number one, that's a neutral spine. That's ideally where we want to be in before we then brace to add load and do any movement. If we look at number two, we've got a pelvic tilt, and it's actually, they're tilting their pelvis back the way. So imagine their belly button's coming up towards their face, and if you do that too much, it can cause a wee bit of rounding at the upper back. Yeah. And that can't be good for certain exercises as well. There's certain exercises where we maybe look for that, and we're going to talk about that when it comes to the hollow hold. Probably the worst one, and the thing that people does the most, is when they stick their bum out, their pelvis tilts forward, and then it causes an excessive arch at the lower back. So then when we add any weight to that in terms of movement, the likelihood of injuring yourself or hurting your lower back, greatly increases, especially in things like deadlifts, squats, and that's where I see most injuries, especially in the lower back, happening. Alright, quick tip for working on your core and getting the positioning right. So think about the position of our pelvis. If it's tilted forward, we're going to have a big arch at our back. If it's tilted the other way, it can cause us to round a wee bit, especially on this upper back. Best way is just to get on the floor. Yep. Think about twerking, or you're doing the Michael Jackson. Yeah. And you're just going to work on making that curve at the bottom bigger. Then you're going to take it away, bigger, take it away, and I'm trying to exaggerate so you can see here. Yeah. And then engaging our core is actually tilting up, so bringing the hips up, yeah, tilting the pelvis back, taking away that curve. My abs are engaged, so it feels nice and tight here, yeah, and there's no gap at the back. Alright, I want you to give that a wee try. Cheers. So that first drill, just to get you used to moving your pelvis. So you can do this sitting in the car, you can do it lying in your bed. Give it a little go and just practice moving your pelvis back and forward. And when we've got that, and you feel comfortable, we're going to add a little bit of movement. So can you maintain that neutral spine with movement? Hi guys, so once we've actually got that positioning and that awareness, we're going to add a little bit of load. The next thing is just we're going to get on all fours. So we're here, and then we're going to work on arching and bringing in. Yeah, so we can see that. You can probably see the difference a bit better in this position. So from here, I'm going to try and find neutral, which is here, so this is nice and flat. And then I'm going to start off by opposite arm and leg going out, trying to maintain that neutral position. I'm going to switch sides, slow and controlled, opposite arm and leg, out, back in, and keep that position. Yeah, I don't want to be here, and I don't want to be here. Alright, give that wee one a go, thank you. So I would probably aim for 3 sets, 5 reps each side, and when you feel that you've got that, we can then move on to adding load. So what does engaging your core mean? So the next part, we've been creating awareness, just getting that positioning, so there's no point adding load or actually trying to engage if you're in the wrong position. So, for example, if I'm here and my hips are tilted forward and then I try and brace, I'm going to be bracing in the wrong position. So I need to find that neutral position, yeah, tight. And then all you're going to do, imagine you're going to get punched in the tummy and tighten up those muscles. Remember, it's like a corset that goes all the way around. So everything should be tight and locked down, rib cage is down. I'm going to breathe in through the nose and just hold that breath, and that's going to get me super tight. So I'm ready to then create movement from this core position. Alright, so I want you to try that. Try the breathing through your nose. So a lot of the time we're maybe told to engage our core, but we don't know what that means. So think, before we engage, we're going to sort our pelvis and our hip position and then lock everything down and get it super tight. When we've got that, then we're going to add in some bracing and strengthening exercises. So bracing exercises, for me, this is the foundation. If you don't know how to brace and engage your core, your strength and power will be limited. Not only that, the risk of injury will greatly increase without bracing. So if you've ever hurt yourself doing a deadlift or a squat, it's probably because you've not set and you've not braced before you've actually did the lift. Everyone should start here before progressing to dynamic bracing and anti-rotation work. Aim for 1 to 2 minutes max. For me, there's not much benefit of over 2 minutes. If you think about any exercise you do, whether it's squatting, bench press, deadlift, kettlebell press, any of your big exercises, they don't last for longer than 2 minutes. So we're kind of getting into endurance. We want to be able to get a really good 60 seconds, of hold. So we should be working our reps between 30 to 60 seconds with maximum tension, squeezing everything super tight rather than aiming for longer holds. If you want to work more, then add more sets. So you could do 30 to 60 second holds, have a little rest for maybe a minute and then go again. That would be much more beneficial and more specific to help you to your lifting. Once we've got that, then we would progress on to the dynamic bracing, which is adding in movement. So I'll take you through a couple of my go-to bracing exercises in little sequence. We're going to start with a low plank. So we're working on the core when it comes to our main kind of strength exercises like our squat, deadlift, bench, pressing. Static exercises are going to help us much better because we actually need to brace in order to move. So doing lots of sit-ups and flexion type exercises are not going to transfer to your main lifts. So I'm going to just take you through a low plank. Alright, so I'll start on my knees, elbows here, shoulders down and back. And then I want to make sure that I can, rather than here, I can hold that position. See how I've got a nice straight angle? I'm not arching my back here. So you're going to try the low plank exercise first and just work on the core position that we've kind of been going over in the other videos. Thank you. Once we've got that low plank, we can then move on to the high plank, which is a wee bit more demanding because it brings in some straight arm strength. So we're going to move on to the high plank, and this is the foundation for moving on to our press-ups and some of our more advanced exercises. So think about the towel, right? It's just wobbly like this, and if I start to rotate it, if you were going to hit somebody, this is creating torque and it becomes solid and tight, and that's what we want to do with our arms. So our hands need to screw in to create that torque. Shoulders down and back, and that creates tension. So I'm going to show you here, and I'm going to get that core positioning. So I'm up and I'm finding my neutral, and I'm squeezing and holding rather than arching. Squeeze, hold, abs are engaged, abs are tight. You're probably aiming for about 10 to 15 seconds maximum tension on these to start with and build up. Give it a go. So once we've kind of mastered a low plank and a high plank, we can add in what we call the hollow hold. Now there's a wee bit more what we call posterior tilt, and what that means is there's a little bit of rounding, and if you noticed in my low plank and my high plank I was kind of rounding my upper body a little bit, and that was just kind of trying to get that hollow position, which can be really beneficial for some of our more advanced exercises like a pull-up or muscle-ups and our kind of gymnastic moves. Yeah, so just bear in mind we're trying to kind of keep the low back flat when we're working on this hollow hold, and you'll be able to see that in the demo. I'm going to give you another exercise, another static exercise that we use in the gym. I think it's called the hollow hold. So we're actually going to tilt a wee bit more and create some flexion here, but we're going to hold it, yeah, which is really beneficial for certain exercises. So we'll show you on the floor. So we start here, and I'm just going to find that neutral, tilt my hips, yeah, lower back is right in. I'm going to lift my shoulders up to engage my core even more. I can start off slow, just feet up in here, and then when I start to get it, to make it a bit harder, I'm going to come right up, push the floor in with my back. You can see me starting to shake a wee bit, and I'm holding that position. As soon as I feel my back coming off, I just return back in. Alright, so give that one a go, see how it feels. We're moving on to extension exercises. So most people tend to neglect any form of extension training when it comes to the core, and they tend to just work on the muscles at the front, so loads of sit-ups, maybe some rotation. Remember, the core's like a corset that wraps all the way around, so we don't want to neglect the back. The stronger our back is, that's going to protect us when it comes to any kind of posterior work. So when we're working on our squats and our deadlifts, a nice strong back is going to allow us to lift more weight and get stronger. It will strengthen your lower back, which is probably the most likely injury when lifting. Static isometric holds. Isometric just means there's no movement, so kind of like a plank. Will get you stronger the quickest. So my go-to exercise for this is arch holds. Once you can hold for 2 minutes, then progress on to some dynamic extension exercises, so adding in movement. You should probably do a bit more of this, especially if you've not been doing any. You could do this a couple of times a week, added into your normal kind of programming. So our next one, so remember our core, it's like a corset that goes all the way around, and it's not just the muscles at the front, it's the muscles at the back as well. So we want to try and strengthen that lower back area. I find that our static exercises are isometric, the one where we're holding, they'll get you the strongest, the quickest, and it's really important to build a foundation with them before we then start adding in more complicated movements. So this is called our arch hold. So we're down on the floor, and then all we're going to do is lift up and hold that position. You can make it harder by pointing the toes and lifting them up. And relax. You should feel tension run about your lower back. You're using those muscles to contract and hold. Let's give that one a go for maybe 20 seconds for a couple of sets. Okay, so once we've kind of got the static stuff, so we've did our planks, we've did our arch holds, our hollow holds, then we're going to move on to some dynamic bracing. And these are like the foundation exercises, and if you think about getting really good at these, you can add in some of the more advanced stuff. The first one's called a dead bug. Right, so the next thing we're going to work in is actually movement, dynamic exercises. But if you think about it, we don't want to be doing loads of sit-ups. We want to be able to brace and create movement, your big compound exercises. So this is just going to bridge the gap for these. So I like to work on bracing with movement and anti-rotation. I'm going to cover my two go-to exercises. The first one's the dead bug. So we're going to lie on the floor and we're going to get that nice tight
neutral position, abs are engaged. I'm going to lift the legs, lift the arms up straight, and that's tight. And then all I'm going to do to start with is opposite arm and leg goes out. I'm just tapping down, coming back up. Tapping down, coming back up. And you feel by adding the movement, your back is having to work to stay against the floor. Alright, give that a try, 5 reps each side. So bracing with movement, we just worked on the dead bug. I'm going to show you the bird dog. There's loads of different variations, but think about these are the basics to get your control, get your bracing first. So practice them. Once you've got that, it's easier to add more load. Our bird dog, yep, we're going to go here. I'm going to find that neutral. We're going to go out and think about trying to get your elbow in towards your knee while maintaining that core stability. You're going to do 5 each side. Yep, then switch sides. Now, we can add things like bands, we can add weights and rows and different exercises to make this a wee bit more complicated, but try that one 5 each side and try and prevent any side to side movement and flexion and extension. So you want to keep that locked in and your abs tight. You should be really focusing on the feeling you get through there. Give it a go.
So once we've got our, our dynamic bracing, we can start moving on to anti-rotation exercises, which are really good for kind of single limb work, and you can see in the picture. So things like single arm bench, single arm press, or pistols or lunges, all that is anti-rotation work. We need to be really strong to prevent movement while producing movement at the same time. So it's used, as I said, unilateral, help with resisting force and then being able to transmit force. It's more functional and incorporates balance. It's back sparing, there's less likelihood of flexion extension, and the loads are generally lighter also. And we certainly should incorporate into our training either by unilateral exercises like lunges, single leg, single arm, or by accessory anti-rotation work. I'm going to go over a little drill that we use, just a simple one you can use with a band, but just think about the most important way to work our core is with our normal exercises. So my pressing, my bench, my deadlift, my squat are all core exercises.
We're going to work a wee bit on introducing anti-rotation. So when we're working on our deadlift, our bench press, our squat, it's we're kind of using both limbs at the same time, so it's more bracing and there's not so much anti-rotation. When we start going on to kind of single arm, single leg stuff, then there's a big element of anti-rotation, and it's and it's preventing yourself from rotation. So a good starting point for this is what we call the Palov press. So you take a band, you can touch it against the door or anything kind of solid. You're going to come out and you're going to pull it out so that it's trying to rotate me that way and I'm trying to resist. And then all I'm going to do is bring it into the centre and push it out. Into the centre and push it out. And I can feel my core working, trying to prevent me from rotation. Give that one a go for maybe 5 reps each side. So let's try and put it all together. So when you think about core training, a lot of people come and they think it's all about doing sit-ups or an abs class, which is actually probably doing you more harm than good. All the stuff we've put together, when people say, give me an exercise to up your core, it's all your big compound exercises. So think about our bracing. You would take your weight, so my goblet squat, I have to brace tight before I can generate force. My single limb stuff, so from here, it's anti-rotation, I have to get tight and able to press that overhead. Yeah. So once you've mastered the basics that we've covered in this tutorial, you can then take that into your strength training and you're going to get more bang for your buck than doing hundreds of sit-ups. Alright, give it a go.
My number one question I get asked about core training is how do I get a six pack or a flat tummy? Yeah. And I think within the fitness industry, we see these pictures, we see these videos, and we see people doing lots of sit-ups, so we automatically assume that we need to do more. Now, if you don't know this already, it's going to come as a bit of a shock to you, but six packs are built in the kitchen. So it doesn't matter how much core training you do, yeah, if you don't address your food and your nutrition to lose body fat, then you're not going to have a flat tummy. Yeah, so the only way in order to get that flat tummy, to get those muscles shown, is by addressing our nutrition. So I can't, stress that enough. How do we get better at core training? Practice. So our takeaway points: positioning first. Make sure that we get in the right positioning. We want to then lock everything down, brace as if we're about to take a punch, and then we would add that and strengthen that and produce movement. Starting with our planks, then we're going to move on to our dynamic bracing with some bird dogs, some dead bugs, and then from there we're going to just think about that as skill training and awareness training, and then we go into our main lifts. It's going to help us to have that control, to be able to use the muscles better so that we can contract and brace and engage our core to help us stay injury free, to be able to lift more, get stronger and get better results in the gym. Thanks very much for listening. If you do have any questions about this or anything else, please pop them in any of the comments, or feel free to email me at robert@reactivetraining.co.uk, and I'll hopefully see you on some of the other workshops.